Hi, and welcome to this episode of the Digital Placemaking Podcast, a podcast about the role of public space in the city and how digital technologies can assist in capturing and improving cities and public life. I am your host, Shannon Fisher, an urban planning and urban design student. Okay, hi Tristan. Thank you for joining me. Do you want to give us like a little quick introduction of like what you're doing, where you're at, what your interests are, whatever you want us to know about
No, thanks for having me. This is exciting.
you?
Peers interviewing each other. So I'm finished my undergrad in urban regional planning at Wits, busy with my honors right now. I'm really interested in new space of tech. I'm on the fence with urban design and then moving into a more like hardcore tech space with coding and all that stuff. But my research is in Rosebank, looking at um, doing a design intervention to create more of a community in the space by leveraging some economic factors and then hopefully making it more of an equitable space as well. So yeah, that's what I'm interested in. But generally, I also love travel. So yeah.
Oh, that's super
Uh,
interesting. You know, our research and our interest in urban planning align a lot, so it's perfect to have you here.
uh,
So I'll start. We'll get right into it. So my podcast is about public space, mainly, and public life, and the integration between urban design and digital technologies. So like first and foremost, I want to ask like what makes public space and public life important in cities to you? Like how how is public life significant to you? And yeah, like what does it mean to you? Public life, like, parks, but also just like streets, squares, sidewalks. What does public space mean to you and how is it meaningful?
well, I think public space in essence is society, right? It's civilization. It's being able to go out into the parks and the streets and meet other humans. It's the complete basis of the civilization throughout history, right? It's like how we define civilizations is when people started, obviously agriculture, but then also town plazas, like common squares. So I think it's a very important part of life, and I think it's something that's definitely coming up to be more of a point of interest right now because of the introduction of an online space. Because before the
Mm.
internet, public life was all you had, right? It was everything. I think right now it's getting a bit lost, like with the invention of the car and then the invention of the internet. Public life has taken a huge nosedive. I mean, especially in like more Americanized countries like South Africa and the US, and maybe not so much in some of the European countries I visited. But yeah, public life is the essence of society and culture. So yeah,
Yeah, I
important.
completely agree. I remember I read something that spoke about how we kind of live in these really segmented, like almost like containers, um, where, we go to, I mean, as an adult, you're going to work for your 9 to 5, and from work you're coming home, and then you're in your home, you're exposed to your work colleagues, and maybe you'll interact with people there, but it's a workspace. You're going home, and then you're exposed to your family, but it's very like closed off. If you're going to like grocery shop, if you're going to drop your kids off at school, it's all very segmented where you're going there for a purpose. And outside of those chains or like containers, there's not a lot of space to engage with people. There's not a lot of space for those almost like intermediate buffers between those containers, to kind of get outside of what you're already exposed to. And it's like if you're not meeting people or exposed to people in those containers, then you don't. Um, you don't interact with people at all. Or let's say you are grocery shopping and you like somebody's trying to engage with you, it's almost like shamed upon where you kind of don't speak to. And maybe this is just what I've experienced. Maybe it's different in different areas, but I think for the most part, it's like you're there for a purpose. You're not there for chit chat. Maybe you'll say hi, bye to somebody, you'll be polite, but you don't engage in anything meaningful. And it's almost taboo to try to, engage past a point, past this barrier of like respectfulness. And I think I'm really interested in that. And I think public space is so much more important now, like more than ever, because we're increasingly becoming segmented where we don't need to leave our homes if we're working online. We don't need to do much past the point of like work and home, and seeing people we already know. And I think it's really impacting the way we live as a community. Like, if like in this increasingly individualized society, you know, it's so difficult to create a meaningful community and really feel like you could live in a neighborhood and not know who your neighbor is and not know who the people living across the street from you are because you're isolating yourself to your home.
Yeah.
So I think like what you're saying about like public space is society, I think is so meaningful because that's where I think, the human experience is engaging with other humans. It's like it provides opportunities for people to gather and socialize and promotes healthy living and a sense of community and longing. And I think belonging. And I think it can really improve the quality of life in cities. And I think it's something that's so overlooked. I think.
Yeah, it's not
um,
overlooked anymore because you're looking into it. Haha.
Exactly.
Um,
Yeah, I think it's super important, and I think, um, yeah, we need to really focus on it.
we do.
Moving on to our next question, how
Okay.
do you think that, or maybe like rather, how do you think that digital technologies can help us understand and improve public space?
I think understanding and improving obviously they go together. Um,
Yeah,
but I think the way that it can help us understand it is people are or tend to be very open online. I mean, obviously you get the filters that people put on to maybe make their life look better or things like that. But I think apps like Twitter, where people just kind of say whatever's on their mind, I think leveraging that is a very quick way to evaluate like the how positive a public space is. Like when you're talking about Emerentia, for example, if you go look
Mhm.
at if there's no event on or something, just the normal things people are saying about Emerentia, people are like asking like, oh, is it safe? Is it not safe? Like what times do we have to leave? Things like that give you a big insight into how the place is perceived. And then once you've
Yeah,
identified how it's perceived, then you can start thinking about what kind of interventions like need to be happening. And it's the same with what you were talking about, just walking into strangers and being able to like strike up that kind of conversation. I think when you put events on in public space, people will engage a lot more with, obviously online, they'll engage with that event that's happening. But then it's also in person easier for those people to get to know each other because when you're young gay talks about this, where if you're two people are engaging in a single external thing, then it makes it easier for you to communicate and talk. So think about things like live music or like sports games and things like that. Um, and because people are so open online, when they have those connections in the real world, then they're going to talk about it or post about it online. And
yeah,
then it's highly accessible to anyone who's thinking about doing an intervention there. All you have to do is figure out a way or set your parameters of what you want to ask these social media applications, right? Because you can't just be like, did people have a good time? You're gonna have to like dig down, find keywords that people were posting with to be able to like get some meaningful data from that. Um,
yeah,
but I think that people also posting, you literally just look at how much people post with a space like that engagement. Because if people don't post a lot, then obviously the place isn't that engaging. But if there are
yeah.
hundreds of photos coming up every hour, then you know, okay, something's happening, something's being done right. So
It could
I
be good
think
or bad, but
it could be
also,
good or bad, but at least you'll be able to you can see it so clearly. Like I think it speeds up the process of or the interviews or the public engagement so much because you can just see what thousands of people are thinking or posting about every hour of every day. You don't actually have to go down and find people who are comfortable to be interviewed and then go through the whole process of like, all right, this is what I'm researching, da 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 da. Once they put it online, you can just see it. It's yeah,
I
yeah,
think, yeah, I think your chat about social media is super interesting because social media has almost become the new public space. Like it's a public platform that people engage in digitally, but it's like you're almost exposing yourself to people and putting up this perception to people engaging with people socially on this digital platform, and almost in a way like that replaces what would what interacting in IRL in real life
yeah,
would be. But I think like I don't think they're like animals. Like I don't think they're opposite to each other. I think they can really complement each other, where you're using social media to improve a public space and using public space to or like leveraging social media for a public space. And I think it'd be a really cool measure of how people see the space, what people enjoy doing, what they don't enjoy doing, and of course, if there's loads of activity, social media activity in a certain place, it could be good, it could be really bad. But you know what they say, like no publicity is bad publicity. Um,
yeah, not if you use it to improve. But that's actually a point
yeah,
there, talking about being people engaging on social media as their social like
yeah,
interaction. That's not something I thought about like now. Um, but also, yeah, I don't think it's a negative thing because I think in general people, if it's made possible and comfy for them to engage in person, like if it's accessible, I think a lot of
yeah,
people would choose that over the online interaction anyway.
yeah. And
Like
I think it's
online
about
interactions are forced, kind of like yeah, it's
yeah,
the last resort. It's the accessible, easy thing to do, but it's not the
yeah.
most fun necessarily.
We can take
Um,
lessons from social media and apply them to create better quality public spaces, I
yeah,
believe. So another topic I was super interested in is urban play. So I think play is so important for not only kids but adults too. Just that freedom, that leisure, that recess to relax, let go, and be playful. And I think public space should be designed to encourage play. And I just wanted to know from you, like, what does urban play mean to you? How important do you think play is in the urban realm, and what can we use to kind of leverage urban play in an increasingly, like urban, like how do we integrate play and into like the urban realm? Yeah,
um, so I think urban play, especially in South Africa, is quite like it's non-existent. Like there's nothing accessible, free that's accessible with like regards to urban play. I think if you're lucky, you can like take a ball and you'll find a little part of the park to go play on. Um, but I think this is something we talked about earlier, well, before this interview. But like for example, in like Tallahassee, Florida, the parks there they've got like really nice like tree parks with ponds or whatever. But then they've also got like sports parks where they've got like six baseball fields and a couple like American football fields and like soccer fields with like nets set up and like everything's really well manicured. There's accessible water and you don't have to pay anything. You just take the stuff that you have and you go and you can use it there. And I think that's really nice because I mean everyone likes going to a space to experience the space for itself, but I think that interaction with the people that comes from play is even
mm,
more important. That like that stress reliever or just that sheer laughter of screwing up in a game or something like that. It's like where the saying it's just a game comes from because it's just supposed to be fun. Okay, it's
yeah,
completely designed for that, and I think that's not something that we have a lot here. Like if you want to go do something like you want to go rock climbing or whatever, even hiking, you have to pay. Um,
yeah,
and that's a shame. It's a shame that there's. I mean, obviously we have different circumstances, um, but it would be nice if you could go to use any space and be able to just freely use it and access it and play there. Um, I think adults and kids have different needs when it comes to play.
yeah,
I think
absolutely.
yeah. Also, like even the parks that would have like swings and things like that are like completely and utterly dilapidated. Like you barely see kids play there. Like just talking about the ones close to me,
Yeah.
the only one that's actually gets used is maintained by the rock climbing club. They cut the grass so kids can play soccer there. Um, so I don't know how to fix that. Like how do we get from the stage that we're in now to getting to a state even where society is more like welcoming and acceptable of play, because it's not just having the space to access it, but people have to want to go there. Um,
Yeah. And I think,
yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
No, that's it. That's it.
And I think like with especially in the context of South Africa, safety is such a vital, important role in, the playfulness of a space in the urban realm. And I think safety is such a big issue that I think people are very skeptical and scared to go to these public spaces because it's not only, them that is vulnerable, but it's their kids that are vulnerable, and it's like not exposing their kids to potential dangers, threats, which completely understandable, or any just like feeling and being safe is so important, and it's so important to create spaces that are safe and inviting for both children and adults. And like I think the biggest question is how do we facilitate that? And I think it's easy to encourage play by I think you can easily have a space, but it needs to be a space that is accessible, whether it's close to transport nodes, just so that a variety of different backgrounds can access it. And also just having kind of like play equipment, whether it be swing slides, like climbing structures, those like hopscotch things on the floor. I think a really good example of the design of a space encouraging play is there's the street in Melville, and the street is definitely like a more popular street socially. It's got bars, it's got clubs. It's definitely not for children like during the evening, but I think during the day it can be. It's got like some boutiques and stuff, but along one of the sidewalks, because it's such a pedestrian kind, like everybody is walking in between restaurants and bars, on in front of this one, I think it's called Joanna's, in front of this one place, it's got a little hopscotch um, kind of outline on the floor.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a simple, cheap intervention, but it's like more likely than not, you're going to kind of either think about play or like play a bit of hopscotch where it's just hopping in between that, like those things. And it's like, it's something so small but so impactful, that isn't necessarily resource intensive, that you immediately associate with having fun, with like playing a game, with something a bit carefree that has no real consequence, but you kind of want to do it anyway.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to provide opportunities to play. And I think as long as you create the environment, where like you have the equipment, you have the safety, you have all of the tools, people will take it upon themselves to play, because I think everybody in some way or another desires play and playfulness. And I think it's important to start encouraging a culture of play in the community where play isn't bad. We shouldn't be so focused on productivity and like every second needs to be a productive second. But sometimes, like, I don't know, there's a friend of mine who I think we joke about it often, just going to a park or a field and just kicking ball. And I think it's so funny because it's such a simple thing, like just bringing a ball to like a field or a park. But immediately, as soon as there's a game to unite people, there's a common goal, there's a common outcome, everybody knows the rules. Um, all your anxieties about interacting people dissolve because it's no longer about that. You're just
Focus on the
there's
game.
this
Yeah.
group, yeah, there's this group cohesion because you all have a common goal, and it just makes it so much easier to connect to people by kicking ball. And I
Yeah.
think, yeah,
A classic example of that is like taking a spade and a bucket to the beach, and the amount of guys you can gather to just dig up a hole is insane. But it's yeah, when people recognize like, oh, there's a small opportunity to like to do that common thing, I mean, we'll jump
yeah,
onto it really fast. Um, Yeah.
And it's something that you kind of lose sight of as you get older, but I think it's extremely important. I think for kids, obviously play is important for their physical and their mental health, their social skills, their problem solving, their creativity. But I think more important than that is like a sense of belonging and community that exists um outside of the anxieties that, the real world, dare I say, can like place on us. Um, and yeah, I think so. So leading on to the next question, how do you think digital technology can be used to promote urban play? I'm interested to hear your perspective on that.
Um, I think integrating it with parks is gonna be hard. But I think
Yeah.
digital technology has already been integrated with maybe I wouldn't term it urban play, but maybe corporate play. In like a lot of
Uh-huh.
businesses have like PlayStation set up in the workspaces and things like that. Um, which is just like it's a great team building and relaxing exercise. That you can go with your colleagues just play some I don't know, Call of Duty or something. Um, so I think how do we leverage that kind of thing to bring it to the public life is quite an interesting challenge. Like taking it
Yeah.
from the technology on how to like map urban play and all of those things. We're planners. We can do that. We can collect the data. We can make the maps where like a nice intervention will be or whatever. But I think using technology physically in the space could be quite
Mm,
exciting. The only thing I can think of right now is like the get two things. So one, drones, like the light shows and things that you can do with drones. That could be a really
yeah.
fun thing happening. That's it's not too cost ineffective. But the other one is projectors. I'm sure, like
Ooh.
even just changing games, if you could have a blank wall and a projector across from it, you could have dozens of games happen on that wall. All you need is a screen. Whoever comes up can pick the game they want to play, and then yeah, you could play so many games, especially with motion tracking technology like right now.
Yeah.
You could change any blank space into any game that you want. And I think that would be quite an interesting thing, especially like putting it on streets where like people are just kind of walking past. There's this interesting video on Reddit where it's a colorization of the first like camera filming people on the streets in Copenhagen, and
Mhm.
everyone is so like enamored with what's happening. Like they are so curious and like stopping and staring at this camera. I think you could recreate that in a modern sense with a projector and just get people to play games on the sidewalk, right? Like
Yeah.
you could partner with a business and you could do it outside like a cafe and yeah, work with them to like maybe take the camera down every night so that it doesn't get stolen. Um,
In South Africa, of
yeah,
course.
and then you can have people stopping and playing outside of the business, and I think having a doing it at a space where the business falls out onto the sidewalks like a cafe with outside seating would be even better because then it's that communal interaction at a like an anchor point, you know.
Yeah.
Um, so that could be pretty fun. What kind of things were you
Yeah.
thinking about?
I see. I was thinking about so how to incorporate digital games into public spaces because I think digital games and gaming is so good. Like Minecraft is such an excellent kind of learning tool that's also like a game and it makes it fun and accessible to children. Um, and like the building blocks of like reality. So how do you integrate digital games into a public space? Because I think public like play in real life is so important and shouldn't only be digital. And I think the point I came across was augmented reality. I mean, I think the perfect example is Pokemon Go. People were stuck in their
Yes, that
houses
happens so
for
much.
so many months. And as soon as Pokemon Go came out, people were leaving their homes for this common goal. And it's like how augmented reality and your like location services on your like mobile device can be used to encourage play. And like it created such a sense of community because people had this common goal, whether even if it was like an abstract, like, oh, collecting points, upgrading your character, collecting Pokemon. That kind of isn't meaningful in real life. Like, it's not like there's any translation of the currency in game into real life, but it was like because there's no pressure and like almost real life meaning, it becomes so much more leisurely. You can enjoy it so much more.
Yeah.
People were, I mean, maybe to like, I think maybe sometimes it went far where people were going into
Really
other people's
far.
property. But I think like that was such a cool way to integrate like technology with public life where you actually have to move from place to place to, you know, catch these checkpoints and to upgrade your legend and to like play with other people. I think like if we had more of those opportunities, I think, and even just like other augmented reality where you use your phone, and then there's a camera, and then the camera kind of places a like a game over or like characters, and you can kind of engage with that where you're able to mesh the real and like the imaginary mythical, like, and you know, kids have such creative imaginative minds. I think that would be a really cool way to leverage it,
Yeah.
um just with keeping in mind safety. You don't want your phone to get stolen, but I think doing that
Yeah.
in a public way to connect to people, I think your idea with the projector is super cool. I mean, I can like I promise you, if there was a public park and they had a blank wall that had just dance on it, I
You
would
would
be
be
there first
cleaning
and foremost.
house.
But it's like,
Yeah.
you know, I think it's just such a stress-free way to enjoy and connect with other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even
And the,
yeah.
yeah.
I think to pull people out into the public space, I think like something that's used quite a